You have 5 minutes. Those 4 words hit me at exactly 5 p.m. on a Friday. Richard Vance stood in my doorway, arms crossed, that smug expression on his face like he'd just won something. I looked up from the logistics report spread across my desk. Excuse me? 5 minutes to clear out your desk, David. Security's waiting. My hand stopped moving over the keyboard. 10 years. I'd given this company 10 years of my life, and now I was getting 5 minutes. Richard, what's going on? What's this it? It's about business decisions, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. We're making changes to the operation structure. Something clicked in my brain. I'd heard rumors floating around for the past 2 weeks, whispers in the break room, conversations that stopped when I walked it. When does she start? Richard's jaw tightened. When does who start? Your daughter. When does she start in my position? The silence that followed told me everything. He didn't deny it, didn't try to spin it, just stood there with that irritating blank expression. Monday morning, he finally said. Jessica's got her MBA from a top school, fresh perspective, new energy. Fresh perspective? I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. Richard, I've built this entire operation from the ground up. Our delivery success rate was at 58% when I started. It's at 97% now. You'll receive severance, 2 weeks' pay. Janet from HR will handle the paperwork. 2 weeks? I stood up slowly, my chair rolling back. You're really doing this? I don't owe you an explanation, David. This is my company and I make the decisions. 4 minutes now. That's when something shifted inside me. Something colder, more calculated. Because Richard Vance had just made the biggest miscalculation of his professional life and he didn't even know it yet. I'll be out in 4 minutes. He nodded and walked away, probably feeling powerful. I sat back down and opened a very specific folder on my laptop. The folder labeled ML Fleet Management. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah and I started our own business, Thompson Logistics, a vehicle leasing company. And our biggest client, the one who leased all 73 of their delivery trucks, cargo vans, and refrigerated vehicles, Vance Freight, Richard's company. I pulled up the master lease agreement and went straight to Section 12, Paragraph 4. The termination clause I'd written myself when we negotiated this contract. Under the Uniform Commercial Code Article 9, this gave me the right to peacefully repossess my collateral. Business relationship dissolution. I started typing. Email to our lawyer, Thomas Reed. Email to Barnes Storage, the impound facility we'd worked with before. My hands didn't shake. I packed up the photos of Sarah, Luke, and Emma. Left the awards on the wall. Richard's daughter could figure out what they meant. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Richard was waiting by the elevator with Frank from security. All set? Frank asked. He looked uncomfortable. All set, I said. Then I looked directly at Richard. What are you talking at? Nothing important, I said as the elevator doors opened. I'm sure she'll figure it out. He was starting to sense something was wrong, but he couldn't quite put it together. The doors closed and I let out a long breath. On a Friday evening, Richard Vance's entire world was going to collapse. They wanted to fire me. Fine. The drive home felt surreal. Traffic on the interstate, same route I'd taken for 10 years, but everything felt different. I ignored it. Sarah's car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. He usually worked until 6 handling the administrative side of Thompson Logistics from his home office. He must have seen me pull in because he met me at the door. What happened? Richard fired me. 5 minutes notice. He what? Fired me so Jessica can have a nice executive title on her resume. I walked past him into the kitchen and set my bag down. Luke was at the table doing homework and Emma was in the living room with her sketchbook. You okay? I'm fine, honey. Keep working on your math. Sarah followed me into the kitchen, lowering his voice. After everything you've built for them. Yep. I pulled out my laptop and opened it on the counter. Which is why I need you to call Hector Silva right now. All 73? Every single one. The lease agreement's clear. Richard just dissolved our business relationship. This is going to destroy his operations. That's his problem, not mine. He should have thought about that before handing my job to someone who's never run a logistics operation in her life. I pulled up the vehicle tracking system. Most are at the main distribution center, but we've got 17 out on routes, 9 at the South Warehouse, and 4 at client loading docks. Sarah was already pulling out his phone. I'll call Hector. I'm calling now to confirm. Thomas Reed answered on the second ring. Walk me through this. I explained the situation, the firing, the timeline, the lease agreement terms. Section 12, paragraph 4, he said. Business relationship dissolution. You're definitely covered. So, we can legally recover all vehicles? You can legally recover all vehicles, he confirmed. That gives you your 24-hour notice requirement. You want to move on this tonight. Then I'd suggest starting the recovery around 2 ITM, less traffic, fewer complications, and it gives you Sunday to secure everything before business hours Monday. Send me the paperwork as soon as it's filed. I hung up and looked at Sarah, who was just finishing his call with Hector. He'll need about 3 hours to get everyone coordinated, but he can start at 2 ITM like you wanted. What's this going to cost? Us. About $40,000 for the full recovery operation. Vance Freight can't pay us if they can't operate, I said. And once word gets out that their entire fleet disappeared, their clients are going to panic. Sarah's eyes widened. You want to go after his clients? We've got 3 years of experience running a leasing operation. Why not expand into actually running the delivery routes ourselves? We'd need drivers, insurance, dispatch systems. I built Vance Freight's dispatch system on my own time, and I know at least 20 drivers who jump ship from Richard in a heartbeat if we offered them better pay and actual job security. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. You're going to take his entire business apart and rebuild it as ours. He fired me, Sarah, after 10 years, 5 minutes notice, because his daughter needed a job. So, yes, I'm going to show him exactly what he just lost. I couldn't eat dinner. 73 vehicles across multiple locations. Hector's 12 teams could handle about 6 vehicles each per run, so they'd need to make coordinated sweeps. That was the priority target. South Warehouse had 9. I created a spreadsheet breaking down each location, vehicle type, and estimated recovery time. Emma came over and leaned against my shoulder. Something necessary, I corrected, wrapping an arm around it. Sometimes when people treat you unfairly, you have to stand up for yourself by taking back trucks that belong to me and Mom. We own them, sweetie. Steele's company borrowed them. But since he doesn't want to work with me anymore, he doesn't get to borrow our trucks anymore either. That makes sense. Go finish your homework, okay? By 9 p.m., the plan was locked in. Thomas had filed the lease termination paperwork. Barn Storage had cleared space in their secure facility. Every vehicle was tagged in our tracking system with its current GPS location. Luke had gone to bed. Emma was in her room reading. The whole story. Sarah smiled. We're about to commit to this in a big way. I want to remember why we started. Sarah settled back. It was 3 years ago, $215,000. We were talking about what to do with it, and you said we should invest it. I said we should build something that could protect us. 15 years at Vance Freight, and Richard fired him over one missed delivery target. You came home that night shaking because you realized that could be you someday. Tom had been a good manager, dedicated employee, and Richard had tossed him aside without a second thought. I said we needed a backup plan. So, I started researching. What kind of business could we build that would give you leverage in your industry? The profit margins were insane, David. Companies were paying 20 to 30% markups on truck leases. Exactly. So we took that inheritance, bought 10 used trucks in good condition, got them certified, and started Thompson Logistics. We could lease him trucks for 15% less than his current provider. He jumped at it because it made him look good to his investors, I said. Cutting operational costs without reducing fleet size. And over 3 years we grew from 10 trucks to 73, all leased to Vance Freight. Sarah nodded. It was the perfect setup. Something just went wrong with my job. Very wrong. But now we've got the leverage, we built this idiot. Hector starts moving in 4 hours. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I think Richard made a choice. We're just dealing with the consequences of his choice. Messages from Hector. Teams in position awaiting green light. This was it. Once I gave the order, there was no going back. His daughter would walk into her new executive role with no fleet to manage. Vance Freight would be crippled. After 10 years of loyalty, of building their success, of sacrificing time with my family. 5 minutes notice, 2 weeks severance, execute recovery operation. Sarah squeezed my hand, no regrets. The first photos started coming through at 2:07 a.m. Two cargo vans on flatbed tow trucks lit up by work lights at the main distribution center. Then more photos, box trucks, refrigerated semis, delivery vans, all being loaded and secured. Hector's teams worked like a precision military operation. Document the vehicle condition, photograph the VIN, attach the legal notice, load it onto the flatbed, secure it, and move to the next one. Sarah made coffee around 3 IT, and 41 vehicles from main distribution center secured. I read from Hector's message. Moving to South Warehouse now, Sarah asked. Night security guard at the main center asked for paperwork. Guard made a phone call, but whoever he called didn't answer at 2 a.m., so he let them continue. Smart guard. Not his job to interfere with legal repossession. The last 6 were scattered at different client facilities across 2 states, and Hector's teams were coordinating with local tow contractors to grab those. The sun started coming up around 6:15 a.m. Across town, Richard Vance was probably still asleep, having no idea that his entire fleet had vanished overnight. Sarah's phone rang at 6:52 a.m., all 73 vehicles secured. Clean operation, 0 incidents, full documentation. It's done. It's done. Sarah confirmed. Everything's locked down in the secure facility. We finally went to bed around 7:30 a.m. I set an alarm for 11 a.m. I wanted to be awake when the chaos started. Sarah was already up, showered, and working on his laptop in the kitchen. Anything yet? I asked, pouring coffee. She's the weekend operations supervisor. Apparently, she showed up this morning to prep for Monday deliveries and found the entire lot empty. What did Thomas tell it? Referred her to the lease termination paperwork and told her all questions go through legal counsel. I answered anyway. David Thompson? A woman's voice, high-pitched with stress. We have an emergency situation with our vehicles, and I need to know all questions regarding Thompson Logistics vehicle recovery should be directed to our legal counsel, Thomas Reed. I rattled off his number. Please, miss, I came in this morning and every single truck is gone. We have over 200 deliveries scheduled for Monday morning, and you should speak with Richard Vance about that, I said calmly. The vehicles were legally recovered according to those contract terms. But Richard's not answering his phone. I've called him 15 times. Richard was probably enjoying his weekend, maybe celebrating handing his daughter an executive position, completely oblivious to the nightmare waiting for him. That sounds like an internal Vance freight issue, I said. Have a good day, Brenda. I hung up and turned off my phone. Luke came downstairs still in pajamas. Want some pancakes? We spent Sunday trying to act normal. Took the kids to the park, ran some errands, caught a movie. Thinking about Richard's face when he realized what had happened. Thinking about his daughter, Jessica, walking into my old office expecting to start her new executive job. He checked it and whistled low. Richard just called Thomas's office. He's letting Richard stew in it. That night, I actually managed to sleep. Maybe because I knew the hard part was done. Monday morning came. I got up at my regular time, 5:30 a.m., even though I didn't have a job to go at it. After I dropped the kids off, I came home to find Sarah grinning at his laptop. You need to see this, he said, turning the screen toward me. The subject line read, Emergency Board Meeting, Vance Freight. I read the email twice to make sure I understood it correctly. Vance Freight's 3 major investors are calling an emergency meeting at 10 a.m. The email continued. Ms. As major investors in the company, we're trying to understand the situation and explore potential resolutions. Your presence at this meeting would be greatly appreciated. They want you in the same room as Richard, Sarah said. The investors don't know what happened. This feels like the investors wanting to hear both sides before Richard can spin the story. I checked the time, 8:47 ETM. I had an hour and 13 minutes to decide if I wanted to walk into what would definitely be the most awkward meeting of my professional life. I want to see Richard's face when he realizes I'm there. I changed into my best business suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the one I save for major client presentations, professional armor. Sarah helped me print out copies of the lease agreement, the termination notice, and the timeline of events. Remember, you didn't do anything wrong. You executed a legal contract clause. Expensive lobby, fancy elevator, the kind of place that screamed money and power. The receptionist directed me to a conference room on the 14th floor. The receptionist told me the other parties were running a few minutes late and offered me coffee while I waited in a smaller meeting room. At 10:08 a.m., William Barnes himself came to get me. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for coming on short notice. I'm listening. My firm, along with two other investment groups, holds a controlling interest in Vance Freight. Mr. Steele has been evasive about the details." "That's correct. We also discovered that you were Vance Freight's operations director until Friday evening, when Mr. Also correct." William's expression was carefully neutral. "Steele is in the conference room now. He doesn't know you're here. I appreciate the opportunity to explain my side." "Then let's go." 3 people were already seated at the long table, 2 men and 1 woman, all in business attire. Investors. His eyes went wide when I walked in. "What is she doing here?" "Morrison is here at our invitation," William said smoothly, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Please, sit down, David." The 3 other investors watched with expressions of careful interest. William made introductions. "We've met," I said dryly. Nancy leaned forward. "Morrison, we're trying to understand what happened over the weekend. Can you walk us through the situation from your perspective?" I pulled out my folder of documents. 3 years ago, my wife and I started Thompson Logistics, a commercial. Over that time, we've grown our fleet to 73 vehicles, all of which were leased to Vance Freight under a standard commercial lease agreement. On Friday evening at 5 p.m., Mr. Steele terminated my employment as operations director of Vance Freight. Richard's jaw clenched, but he didn't interrupt. The lease agreement between Thompson Logistics and Vance Freight contained a standard termination clause allowing either party to end the lease with 24 hours' notice. In the event of business relationship dissolution, when Mr. Steele fired me, he dissolved our business relationship. Kevin Park was reading through the lease agreement. Section 12, paragraph 4. "This is ridiculous," Richard burst out. "She's sabotaging my company because she's angry about being fired. If you felt the termination clause was unfair, you shouldn't have signed the agreement 3 years ago. You wrote that clause knowing you could use it against me. That's called smart contracting." Nancy looked at Richard. "Morrison's employment?" "That's not what I asked. Why did you specifically fire someone who'd been your operations director for 10 years? Richard's face was getting red. "I'll answer," I said quietly. "She's starting today." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. "Is that true?" William asked. "She has an MBA from. Does she have 10 years of logistics experience?" Nancy interrupted. "Has she saved the company millions in operational costs?" Richard's mouth opened and closed. "You fired your operations director," Kevin said slowly, "who also happened to own your entire vehicle fleet, to give her job to your daughter, who has no industry experience. And you didn't think there might be consequences to that decision." "They're not your trucks," I said. "They're my trucks. You lease them." William rubbed his forehead like he had a headache. "Mr. Vance Freight has over 200 deliveries scheduled for today. We have contracts with major clients. Without a fleet, we can't operate." "We can rent replacement vehicles," Richard said. "And how long it would take to coordinate." "Your clients are going to start canceling contracts by this afternoon." Richard looked around the table, finally realizing how badly he'd miscalculated. "You fired it. She owes you nothing." All eyes turned to me. The reason William had really invited me here. They wanted to know if there was a way to salvage this disaster. "The original lease rate was $32,000 per month for all 73 vehicles," I said. "If Vance Freight wants to reestablish a lease agreement, the rate would be $95,000 per month. 6-month minimum contract, paid in advance." Richard's face went purple. "That's extortion. That's market rate for emergency fleet replacement," I said calmly. "You'll find my price is actually competitive for the situation you're in." "Where I'm paying that," Richard sputtered. Nancy was doing math on her tablet. "Steele, compared to the penalty clauses we'll be paying for missed deliveries, $95,000 a month is the cheaper option. She's holding us hostage. Ms. Morrison is offering a business solution." I let them argue for a minute, then spoke up. "Actually, I'm withdrawing that offer. I don't want to lease vehicles to Vance Freight anymore," I said. "But I would be interested in reaching out to your current clients and offering Morrison Logistics services as an alternative delivery provider. We have the expertise, and we can offer them reliability that Vance Freight clearly can't guarantee anymore." You can't do that. That's corporate sabotage. It's capitalism. It's the free market. I'll sue you for this. On what grounds? I haven't broken any laws. I executed a legal contract clause. I checked. I'm free to start a competing business and contact any clients I choose. Are you going to let her destroy this company? You destroyed this company, Nancy said coldly. We're going to have to explain to our investment committee why Vance Freight's operations collapsed overnight. That conversation is going to be very unpleasant. Mr. Steele, I think you should leave. This is my company. This is our investment, Kevin corrected, and right now, you're a liability. Richard looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in William's expression must have convinced him. He grabbed his briefcase and stormed toward the door, then stopped and turned back to me. No, I said quietly, I really don't think I will. The sound echoed in the quiet conference room. Nancy let out a long breath. Ms. Morrison, William said, sitting back down, tell us about Thompson Logistics. And just like that, the conversation shifted. We spent the next 4 or 5 minutes talking about operations, logistics, client management, and growth potential. By the time I left Walsh and Partners at 11:30 ITM, I had business cards from all 3 investors and an open invitation to pitch Thompson Logistics services to Vance Freight's top 10 clients. I called Sarah from the car. Sarah listened to the whole story, then let out a low whistle. So, the investors basically fired Richard in front of you. I'd say his days running that company are numbered. And they're okay with you poaching there, I think at this point. They're trying to salvage whatever value they can. The investors might even have a stake in our success if we play it right. You're thinking bigger than just stealing some contracts, aren't you? What if we don't just take a few clients? What if we position Thompson Logistics as the regional logistics provider? I know the industry inside and out. We just need drivers, dispatch infrastructure, and insurance. I know, but we've already taken the biggest risk repossessing the fleet. If we're going to do this, we should go all in. I spent Monday afternoon making phone calls. First to Jamal Jenkins, one of the best route drivers in the business. Jamal, it's David Thompson. David, what the hell is happening over here? Vance Freight is having some operational difficulties, but I've got a proposition for you. How would you feel about driving for Thompson Logistics instead? Mine and my wife's. Luke routes you're used to, professional operation, and 20% better pay than what Richard was giving you. When do I start? How about today? I'll send you details within the hour. By end of day Monday, I'd recruited 18 drivers. We pulled 20 vehicles out of the Anderson's storage facility and got them inspection ready. Tuesday morning, Thompson Logistics officially launched as a delivery service provider. We were operating out of our house, using a makeshift dispatch system I'd cobbled together overnight and coordinating everything through a mess of phone calls and spreadsheets. But we had trucks on the road. Brenda Lewis called Thomas's office again on Tuesday. This time, she left a message that Thomas forwarded to me. Morrison that Vance Freight would like to discuss terms for returning the vehicles. Mr. The investment partners would like to speak with her directly. Too late. We were already building something better. By Friday 61. Former Vance Freight employees were calling me asking about jobs. Word was spreading that Thompson Logistics was reliable, professional, and had the infrastructure to handle serious volume. The local business news picked up the story that weekend. A reporter called asking for an interview, but I declined. This wasn't about publicity. 2 weeks after the repossession, Thomas called with news. Vance Freight is filing for bankruptcy protection. They've lost too many clients, can't secure vehicle leases, and they're facing lawsuits from contract breaches. How's Richard taking it? Not well from what I hear. He's trying to blame you publicly, but nobody's buying it. He made a stupid decision and paid the price. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt tired, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time in my career, I wasn't working to make someone else look good. Every decision was ours. Every success was ours. Luke asked me one evening while I was reviewing driver schedules, "Mom, are you happy?" I looked up at my 13-year-old son. "Yeah, buddy. Steele did?" It started because of what Mr. Steele did, but it's becoming something much bigger than that. 3 weeks after the repossession, Thompson Logistics had 87 employees and contracts across 3 states. Ironically, one of the spaces Vance Freight had vacated during their bankruptcy. Sarah and I stood in the empty warehouse on a Sunday afternoon, looking at the space we'd soon fill with vehicles, equipment, and staff. Richard thought he was doing his daughter a favor. Instead, he destroyed his company and created his biggest competitor. Think he's learned anything from this? I doubt it. He'll probably spend the rest of his career telling people he was sabotaged. Does that bother you? I thought about it. No, the people who matter know the truth. Richard's reputation is his problem, not mine. We hired a proper management team as the company grew. Wait, I couldn't use that name. A dispatch supervisor named Sean O'Connor. 4 months after the repossession, I ran into Brenda Lewis at an industry conference. She'd left Vance Freight before the bankruptcy. It was chaos. Richard tried to blame everyone but himself. She was in over her head and knew it. The investors brought in an interim manager, but by then it was too late. Where'd you end up? Thompson Distribution, better pay, better management. She paused, but watching it happen made me realize I needed to start valuing myself more. I asked for what I'm worth now instead of accepting whatever's offered. Good, I said. We focused on being the best. Fair treatment of employees, reliable service for clients, sustainable business practices. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. I kept one reminder from that Friday evening when Richard gave me 5 minutes to pack up 10 years of work, that night. This confirms the termination of David Thompson's employment with Vance Freight, effective immediately. Sometimes I'd look at that email and remember the anger, the hurt, the feeling of being thrown away like I didn't matter. But mostly I looked at it and felt grateful. The turning point came about 8 months after the repossession. Thompson Logistics was approached by a regional freight company interested in a partnership that would expand our reach into 5 additional states. Sarah and I spent 2 weeks negotiating the terms. When we finally signed the partnership agreement, I realized we'd built something truly significant. It was a legitimate, successful business with real growth potential. Luke graduated middle school. Sarah and I actually took a vacation, a real one where we didn't check email constantly or worry about operations falling apart without us. We'd built something that could function without requiring every ounce of our energy just to survive. During the Q&A, a session, someone asked, "What would you say to Richard Vance if you saw him today?" I thought about it carefully. I'd probably say, "Thank you." The audience looked surprised. He forced me to bet on myself. He forced me to build something I'm truly proud of. Absolutely not. Being fired after 10 years of loyal service was devastating, but I can't argue with where it led me. Subject line, "Congratulations." The message was brief. "You've built something impressive. I was wrong to let you go the way I did. Richard Vance." I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me was curious about what Richard was doing now, whether he'd actually learned anything. I showed Sarah that evening. I don't know. Do I need his apology? The question is whether you want to give him closure. I thought about that. Richard's apology, if it was genuine, was for his benefit, not mine. Thompson Logistics was thriving. I didn't need his acknowledgement of wrongdoing to feel successful. Maybe it was about proving to myself that I'd truly let go of the anger. I wrote back, "Richard, I appreciate you reaching out. I hope you've learned from the experience. Best of luck in your future endeavors." Sarah read it over my shoulder. "That's generous of you. I'm successful enough now that I don't need to hold grudges." We'd become known in the industry as a company that treated people well and delivered reliable service. Drivers wanted to work for us. Investors were interested in our growth model. Everything Richard had built at Vance Freight, we'd recreated better. How 5 minutes of careless disregard for a loyal employee had cascaded into total business failure. The lesson wasn't really about revenge. It was about understanding that your employees are people with skills, connections, options, and the ability to compete with you if you treat them as disposable. Richard had forgotten that, and it cost him everything. We had 260 employees, a fleet of 143 vehicles, and contracts with major clients across 11 states. Sarah and I bought a lake house where we could actually disconnect on weekends. Luke was thriving in high school. Emma was pursuing dance seriously. We built not just a successful business, but a life we were proud of. And it all started because someone underestimated me. Because someone thought I was disposable. because someone forgot that the person who built their success could also build their competition. I kept Richard's termination email in a folder on my desktop labeled motivation. Not because I needed reminding of what he'd done, but because I never wanted to forget what I'd learned. Your value isn't determined by whether someone else recognizes it. Your value is inherent in your skills, your dedication, your knowledge, and your character. When someone treats you as disposable, it says everything about them and nothing about you. The only question is what you choose to do about it. I chose to build something better, and that made all the difference. If you've made it this far, you've just witnessed what happens when someone bets on themselves instead of accepting being thrown away. If you're in a situation where you're undervalued or taken for granted, remember, you have more power than you think. Build your options, know your worth, and never let someone else's poor judgment define your future.